What does it take to get beyond the damage of words? I'm Katrina Collier. Join me each week as I explore what it takes to step into a happier future. My guests are sharing their stories of when they realised that they needed help and what it took to take that first step, so that you leave inspired and maybe even start on your own path to self-love, care, compassion, and of course happiness. So without further ado, let's hear their stories. Chantelle Larsen, welcome to Beyond the Damage of Words podcast. I'm so excited. We finally got here.
Yay!
It has taken a bit. So I there is absolutely no preamble on this podcast. We just get straight into it. So what led you into healing or changing or seeking help and anything to make you feel better? What led you there? It's a huge question.
So it is. So first, I think healing, we think of it as sometimes just a physical piece. So for many years, for me, it was all about the physical. So I would eat right. I'm a yoga teacher, trained yoga teacher. But there were circumstances that meant that when we talk about words, I had internalized a lot of words. And that wasn't helping me. So there's the other aspect that I would say, which is the spiritual and mental piece. And how I had absorbed those words meant that across my body had established chronic inflammation. So rash, my right eye had closed up. I lost the ability to walk at one stage.
Wow.
I had what I didn't know at that point was I had tumors. So this internalization of words, I went down, knocked on my husband's office door because I couldn't see out of my eye, and I was just a wreck. I wasn't able to sleep. I was like, I think I need to see the doctor. I mean, for anyone else, they probably would have seen the doctor before then. And he looked at me. He's like, I'm so proud of you. We were both.
Is that because you finally asked for help? Is that why?
I've been to the doctor for like physical different things, but finally asking for help in a way that it isn't just a mental piece.
Yes.
And this is going to sound weird to many people, but my husband for certain things comes with me because I get treated differently at the doctor. So we contacted the doctor. It was literally urgent because I wasn't able to sleep. At that point, it was like 4 or 5 nights in a row. So also your system is in like this. So we went, my doctor wasn't in. My doctor was on training. So I saw another doctor. You've got to imagine I looked like crap. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but anyway, I look like SHIT. And he was there with me, and right eye all closed. Like I was just a mess. And I was explaining to him what had gone on. So several factors had led to that event. One, I had been told not to be visible, and I thought I had overcome that, and then move role. When I got to the new role, and it was through, I knew a person in the company, but there was a senior level interview, and in Switzerland you have your picture on the CV, and he was just like, I wouldn't have hired you on paper, but okay. And I just thought, my tummy at that point, it was like, oh God, what do I do? Because you often think, okay, I can't jump from CV to CV, but I can't stay where I am because I've been told not to be visible. And there was a lot, more. So I thought, okay,
can I be really direct on this? Is this a racism thing, or is it a sexist thing, or is it a?
Yeah, it got worse.
I mean, they're not being visible.
Yeah, it was then explicitly told this is a white Germanic space. You can't be here.
Oh my God.
Or you can't lead here. So what happened internally?
I can't comprehend that people can just. I will never understand how anyone can be like that ever. I'll just.
Well, I'll come to that in the therapy session because actually I can, and I think I needed to get.
You've had to. That's the worst part, isn't it?
Yeah. So it became so so racist, but also there was a power dynamic. So in challenging, they made me change my LinkedIn, to remove my LinkedIn education. And if I didn't, it was like, we're going to make your life hell. I was in the garden gardening on a Saturday, and we had rescheduled the call. I jump on the call. My manager wasn't there. It was the executive. And it was all like literally just threatening me. And it got to the stage of everything in my life I had always navigated. So when I first moved here, my company, which was great, had found me an apartment, but then because I was Black, I couldn't have the apartment. It was everything, but I found a way. I then found a temporary accommodation. And in my mind, it felt like a maze that had actually closed down, and I could no longer find a route forward. And I think psychologically that had happened, and then my body started to shut down. And then when I went to the doctor for help, I was asking specifically for therapy. And I had even spoken to one of my friends in my Black network for Black therapists. So I'd gone, and he was like, yeah, well, racism just exists. That just happens. And I'd never seen my husband get really angry before. And he kind of like thumped his hand, my husband, on the chair, and he actually stood up kind of like alpha male, and I had to calm it down. Like, you know, you have someone, and I was in pieces, really asking you for help. And I just kind of calmed him down, got him to sit down, and I said, well, can I just have some cream for my eye? Which sounds really funny now. So it wasn't even just the racism for me in the workplace and in society. It was even when I was going to get help from the doctor.
And is your husband, is he Swiss? Is he white? Is he
No,
Black?
he's Danish and he's white, but he'd never seen how bad it could get, because I was his wife coming to him. First of all, he was relieved, like, yeah, I think you should have gone ages ago. You know, in all reality, he's got a very Danish sense of humor. He was helping me, supporting me, finally getting help. And I was, in a sense, like, it wasn't even rejected. It was like, you know, it's nothing, you know, you should just carry on.
It's all in your head.
He had a migraine that day. And I was like, well, look, and he said, how are you so calm? And I just said to him, because I always have to be. Yeah. You know, I can't come across as the angry Black woman, was going to achieve nothing. And then I sent an email to my doctor to say, for the first time in my life, I came to you for help, and to try not to cry, but came to help, and I want to be here for my son and my daughter. She was brilliant. She wrote me off sick, said, I'm not here this week because she was on training. That's why she couldn't see me. She immediately said, look, we have a therapist underneath. Let me put the referral in now. I haven't seen you, but she could just sense. Because I had never, the thing was, my husband always gets sick after sick note. I had never been sick in my life.
Yeah.
Never. My mum and dad brought me up like, you go to school. You know, you're sick. I know that's not necessarily the right way, but that's how I was brought up. And I would just like attend virtual calls. You know, I'd be dying with some chicken soup, you know, made in the background and things like that. So I was always turning up, and I was always showing up. So actually there was a sense of, I mean, guilt and shame in like, oh my God, going off sick. It wasn't even just the healing. And I think mental health generally as well, there is a shortage of therapists. One, so it's hard to get access. And then in the Black community, if I can say anything of your listeners in the Black community, we have so much shame about going to a therapist. But my God, if anything, you need it, right?
Probably need it more.
Yeah.
Because of that, the microaggressions and the blatant aggressions. I mean, it's almost like you have to be on defense just for being you, isn't it? It's crazy.
She warned me that there was a 6-month wait list, but what happened was my lovely therapist, Daniela, she had a cancellation. So there was like an email, oh, by the way, you know, there's a cancellation. I was like, yes, I can come now.
Oh, thank you, universe. Oh, so, yeah, that was kind.
In some way, the universe was there. Now, she wasn't the right fit because she couldn't really understand. So because I got rejected for like, oh no, Black therapists don't exist. But by the way, there's a list of, you know, 2025, you know, like here. But having her, she was my connector to the rest of my needs. And the first having her, the other thing that we're quite suspicious about is any kinds of drugs. But because I couldn't sleep, the first thing I needed to do was sleep in order to give my system a chance to recover. And let me give people an indication of what happens. I mean, we talk burnout. My some would ask me for, I mean, he cooks as well, but like, do a boiled egg. I couldn't even function. I put chopped onions in a pot to boil an egg. So this is coming from someone I've cooked since the age I did Sunday dinner from the age, so kind of full British roast. Although I live in Switzerland, I have a British, Centennial and Caribbean heritage. And so like I would cook full on roast. My parents brought me to do everything, multitask and do dinner parties. And then suddenly I couldn't even boil an egg. I mean, Delia Smith kind of teaches you how to do that. We're talking like very basic things I couldn't function. So the first thing was
you were having they would have called it, they call it burnout now, don't they? But you sounds like you're having the old school breakdown, which I think they now call burnout. Breakdown. I don't know why. Maybe it's more an acceptable word. But you were clearly.
Yeah. So the first thing with her was at least she stabilized me. So I think therapy in a way, depending on how bad you are, I'm just conveying my story was actually
this is your story.
Bad. The first thing I think from that point of view of therapy was allowing me to have the condition of one of the most important things you need is sleep. To start to even process, what more that you can do. I think that was step one. For me, she wasn't great, although I had her on the rest. So there were two other important connectors. I found a Black trauma therapist. She is a gold Olympic medalist, saved my life, originally for the Congo, but she won an Olympic medal for Switzerland, and she's really turned to trauma therapy. She works with the body.
And she will have experienced what you have experienced in that case.
I didn't have to translate everything. And with the other therapist, it was like, oh, really? Does that happen in Switzerland? Which is, really, it's like, it becomes really hard. And by the way, my therapist was in German. So that was another big hurdle for me, the first therapist. It's very hard to convey thoughts, feelings, emotions, and process it. And then you're doing it, in another language. But it was so urgent. It was like, I will take it. So I had that level. The second level I found, and actually Patricia, my trauma therapist, she said, how the hell did you get better? Like my skin and everything. I turned to gua sha. I found that one of the biggest problems of this internal piece was creating a lot of inflammation, and I needed to get rid of all this inflammation. And the third piece was eye movement desensitization response. So for trauma, I don't know if you've had experience of that. It was a game changer. And I'll also then explain why in the whole process, which was like 2.5. It's a long process, right?
Years. It's a long process. Yeah, it takes years. It isn't.
Yeah, my daughter got diagnosed as being ADHD and actually she's almost finished diagnosis of autism. It's genetic. We then found out and got the diagnosis for me. And what happens when you are neurodivergent and you go through PSD plus, basically, there isn't a category defined for racial trauma actually, but a PSD plus.
I would call complex PTSD, the constant repetitive trauma, neglect. It's like microaggressions, isn't it? It's constant little comments that are negative that you're taking on board. To me, creates that complex PTSD.
Change.
Yeah,
like you're never actually going to change.
You might find this interesting, but Gabor Mate is deeply concerned that people with complex PTSD, which is a healable thing, are being diagnosed as ADHD. You might want to have a look at what he's talking about because I find it. Yeah, because I've cured my complex PTSD. Well, healed it. I can still trigger, but I have healed the constant alert, hypervigilant, like kind of that that feeling of like forever being on the lookout, like you're protecting yourself, that side of it. So how about he's interesting, his interview with the Diary of a CEO dude whose name has gone out of my head.
So anyway, you can always be up there, but what happens is you take the massive fall and then it's really hard to get back up.
Yeah, because you're overwhelmed.
You're overwhelmed, but what it's very challenging. So you go into a system of where you're sick, you have an insurance company which doesn't want you to be sick. They have no category of which to define complex PSD. They don't understand racial trauma.
No.
They don't believe racial trauma. I go to their doctor.
They haven't experienced it.
I go to their doctor and we say, you talk about the power of words. Words, first of all, you internalize and you actually do process them, so they do have power.
Oh, yeah.
But actually words have power in the other hand because it can further oppress you. So the words if from a person of power is oppressive, but there are systems of oppression. So, for example, the insurance company, I walk into the doctors, give them, because my therapist says, take everything, because she knows how it works. So I take a whole stack, which is like an encyclopedia. He's like, yeah, you are really sick. And he said, can I record the meeting? And I said, sure, you can record the meeting. I said, so what do you do with the recording? Oh, you can ask for a copy. So at the end of the meeting, he said to me, look, actually, I don't see you getting well. And, it is a long process. Confirming that it was complex PTSD. Well. Yeah, so actually, it was really good. And I said, well, can I have a copy of the recording? A week later, I get a letter from the insurance company saying, you're going to be better by next month, and you have to do this. And I thought, but that's completely counter to what the insurance company said. So I keep chasing up saying, can I have a copy of the recording? Can I have the copy of the recording? Can I have a copy of the recording? And by this sense, because what's happening is financially, oh my God, you're going to cut off all the money. You're telling me, it feels like I'm lying because my words don't matter. Your words do. But I can't have a copy of the recording because they're telling me I can't get through. So I ended up...
And this is all adding to the stress that you're already feeling.
I ended up bleeding constantly for this was 6 months of then extra, because it affects your hormones, your cortisol and things like that. So then I was really low on iron. And I ended up the legal company, my legal company, because I also have legal insurance, ends up saying, well, actually, we have a conflict of interest. No SHIT, Sherlock, as my husband said, because he said, are you sure you don't have conflict of interest? Because their health insurance of the employer was the same as my legal insurance. So they transfer it externally. Then we start to get an answer that says, oh, the transcript actually confirms what you say. So someone actually believes me.
Right.
But then I say, well, can I have a copy of a recording? Oh, we deleted it because you didn't ask for it. And I was like, well, I've got 4 emails that I did ask for it. But then nothing.
Crazy.
So all of this is more stress. So I think words not only internalize, some people's words are worth more than others. There's an imbalance of words, I would say. Not all words, unfortunately, are equal.
And I think the worst thing is you can then take them on, and I bet this is what your therapist spoke to you about, your trauma therapist, that we take them on and then we're repeating them to ourselves.
Yeah.
Did you have that?
In essence.
So what did Patricia, what did she do? What was her therapy and how did that help you?
Patricia's body therapy was amazing because it allowed me to establish a safe space wherever I am. And in a world of repeated trauma, when you have complex PSD, because it's not about the past, you're actually always anxious for the future. I can be anywhere within Switzerland and I can get racism again, but it's how do I establish my safe space? That's number one.
How did you do that? Can we share that?
Yeah.
How you do that?
Visually, I always go to it's visually in my body, I go to a place. Then we establish a physical connection of movement of where I go to that place. Then we established actually physical body exercises where it was actually increasing what makes me feel safe and connecting with what empowers me. So for me, it's very much like a hooker stance, by the way, like grounding. Yeah. So one of my favorite things, and I take on board what she said, she said the beginning of hell was, I think, therefore I am, because we play too much in our head. Yeah. We very much have this spiritual connection and we very much have this body connection, which we do not come into. And so we use the body, we use the gut, we use the spirituality, which connects us back with who we are, which brings healing. And through that, a lot of other things started coming to me, from ancestors through to connections that I have far beyond Switzerland. And that started to bring part of the answers for me, because for me it was like, how do I survive? Because actually they have power to take away my income, I will be blacklisted. But it started to come along like, you know what, Chantelle, you're bigger than Switzerland. You can actually, if you start to think within the system that they think of you in, that's your limitation, but actually you are unlimited. You actually have to think differently. So I started to think differently, but when I then combined that with EMDR, which made me, so the difference between, I would say, Patricia, not that we didn't go into the trauma, we did, and she gave me those things which are absolutely powerful. in EMDR, my God, did we go back into every single trauma?
Yeah.
Many
And
traumas.
release the energy
Release
that you
the
were holding.
energy, lean into them. And when you said, like, it made me see it for what it is. So going back into that very first meeting with the executive when he was like, well, maybe, you know, we shouldn't hire someone
I
like
wouldn't
you
have
on
hired
paper,
you.
or
Oh,
doing that
wow.
threatening behavior of deleting myself, you know, from LinkedIn and all of these things. What it showed me was my very presence as a Black woman foreigner to a Swiss system actually was threatening in itself. And it was counter to a system which is predominantly male, predominantly white, predominantly Swiss. How can my excellence, that questions the very being of that system. So it was never about me.
No.
It was, you know, and actually in some ways it's like, yeah, that's your limitation. So I could let go of that. At the same time, it was, you know, going into the situation where that person said to me, you know, don't be visible. The initial piece, it started off with, it was very interesting, belittling. The person came in and belittled the current executive, which I thought,
I know
why
my
would you
camera's
do that?
just gone weird, by the way. I think it's
That's
playing up.
okay.
So it'll be interesting, anyone watching the recording. I think
Started
it's
off
playing up.
by challenging another, she belittled another executive, which I felt was
Yeah.
very interesting. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And she said, I'm not threatened by you, which I thought, well, Freudian slip. And my stomach at that point, when we go to, like, always trust your gut.
Yeah.
And then I said, and I had just moved company from an amazing company, and I started to cry for the very first time in a company setting, which I felt so much shame at, until I did the EMDR about, like, why, you know, it was like crying, you know, for that. But there again, it was actually, she was threatened, and her only way in which to deal with that was to bring me down and to tell me not to be visible and don't, you know, and then there was a whole thing about maneuvering me not to be visible.
I definitely think so much there's so much that's systemic in Switzerland. There's no denying that. But I genuinely think person to person, it is so much about internal self-hatred that gets projected.
Yes.
So you are amazing. You're dynamic. You know, you're great at what you do. Oh, that's really threatening to me. So I'll hit back with the racism.
So for 3 years, I wasn't visible. For a long time, I haven't been visible, actually. But with therapy, I took the time to heal, because also, though, when you say that, I could have come from a point of, it's so easy then to come from your own point of self-hatred.
Absolutely. And defend yourself and to, you know, hit back.
It's much harder.
It's much harder to step out of it and almost look at it and go, wow, look what you're showing me about yourself. Like that takes time to get to that point.
Patricia, on her very first meeting, I think we feel like we don't have time. She's like, you've got time, you've got time. And then she said to me, you're imagining it like a kaleidoscope. Don't think about what you want to get to next. We're not going to do that. You need to start, and don't just keep absorbing it. And for a very long time, this kaleidoscope opened up about how I want it to feel, what I want my future to feel like. And I started to see patterns of what I wanted to feel.
Love that.
And it's been a long road.
And it is a long road. I mean, the thing is that we forget that when we start as well, like I started at 40, so I had 40 years. I mean, I'd had the abuse, and then I'd had 20 years of replaying it to myself. So it's like and then we think, oh, we'll go into this and it'll be quick. Well, some of it will be quick, but most of it takes time because you're undoing decades of behavior that you've learned and you're replaying in your head.
But I could see a pattern basically of me bringing this full power of which everyone was trying to suppress, of collaboration that supersedes any country, to basically transform humans at the different level in a way that brings justice, in a way that brings equity, in a way that brings equality, in a way that brings that. And it was my way to supersede anything that would suppress. And I could see all these patterns, which would make no sense to anyone else. I'm sure today it probably still doesn't. But I could see how I could engage at an individual level, how I could engage at a company level, how could I engage at my board level, and how I could engage at a grassroots level. I knew I wanted to do more at grassroots because I knew that I felt like there wasn't enough support for marginalized people like me. So I definitely wanted to do that. I knew that I could see so much bullcrap at a company level.
I love the fact you didn't swear there. That's hilarious.
I really tried.
That word back. You can say bullshit. It's fine. I think you get blacklisted on Apple for the F-bomb, but whatever.
At a board level, which was like, why? At a board level, why are we not providing marginalized shadow boards for companies to not give them an excuse of why they've not got that diversity at the board now? If you provide marginalized shadow boards, they have no risk. They have the chance to develop, to have their successes. They can bring that innovation and that light that they need and lenses to their strategy. Why don't we do that? And I had
how do they do a shadow board or set up a shadow board?
So that's that's one of the things
that's what you're up to.
Going to launch. So
amazing.
Don't want to run over that, but I'm doing that to.
Is this so you're taking the experience that you've had and you are creating, because I was thinking there's a book brewing here, but you are creating.
There's loads of things brewing, but I'm just touching on some of them. I think the power of therapy.
Tell me about this though. You're taking that negativity.
The power of therapy is I actually went from fighting to creating. But creating through collaboration. It was like, you're not a star, you're a constellation. How do I collaborate? So with that, it's a collaboration with Oliver Sanderson. So it's like a collaboration as a charity, as a not-for-profit, which is how do we actually be the answer? Stop talking, start doing. But we understand there's a big gap, and typically people are losing marginalized people at that kind of second, third career level that they drop out of the talent pipe. You're in recruitment, right? So they don't have them. So I don't even know if I know on the current trajectory that we are and the solutions that we have, you will still not have a diverse and representative board. And by diverse, I don't just mean 50-50 gender, by the way. When I talk marginalized, I mean, let's start looking at it in multiple lenses. And the therapy meant that I knew I didn't want to do something that was just black.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be the solution, which was the opposite answer.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And so I think therapy means that you really look at it from a point of compassion, from a point of empathy, and from a point of love. And initially I got asked, like, will you do this for black? I'm like, no, I don't want to do it for black. Not that my black experience doesn't mean that I suffer and have that. But if I come from a point of view of empathy and compassion, I can see so many layers. LGBTQ, neurodivergent, like all of these different things where I very much like, no, I'm fed up. I want to cut ties with the old, and this you become very transformational with therapy is the piece that I think that you can achieve.
Perhaps this is your life calling. Perhaps you've had this experience to lead you to this point, and for you. There are others who are going to do it for the black community, and that's brilliant. I could give you names, but I shan't because this is about you. But it's like they're doing that. You can do yours. You can. This is what you're destined to fix. So
I think it's part of it. I'm very much portfolio driven now. I think the ability of someone trying to erase me or eradicate me means that I have a whole portfolio. There were some things that I thought I was willing to let go of. So I was willing. When I was challenged on not being good enough education wise and made to delete it, I said I would do another doctorate. Because why not just do another doctorate?
I'm sorry, I thought they got you to delete it because they were threatened by it because it was so good.
Well,
you mean they wanted?
The thing was, it was do another doctorate, but by the way, you can't announce that you're doing any research And I was like, well, how can everyone else is? So it was like a bit of Hidden Figures. Do it with your hand behind your back. And I was like, well, and I even said to my colleague, I do pee the same. The quote from Hidden Figures where she said, we pee the same colour. So I was like, we do pee the same. So what happened was I ended up contacting Digital Switzerland to say, can you help me? Because I'm being told, I'm doing this research, but I'm being told I can't announce the research. So they connected me with 12 organizations. They said, we can't do more for you than we do for anyone else. But they had this facility to have coffee meetings. So literally like each month I would take a coffee with a different company. And I went in and I analyzed AI in terms of what made them successful and what made them fail. So it was a huge piece.
Yeah.
Very belittled by the company. So and trying to then stop me because it ended up to be something amazing, but they were still belittling it. So I thought, I'm going to drop it. I ended up having a conversation with someone in the Tavistock Institute, and the Tavistock Institute all about systematic thinking, okay, maybe I'll do it there. And it was a half-hour conversation, which ended up being an hour and a half. And he said, Chantelle, this is game-changing. I actually think you should have a call with Oxford and Cambridge. And I remember coming off the call, speaking to my mum, going, and I'd been through a lot of therapy then. I said, it's really funny. Everything is shining through. I was being suppressed, but actually, I go from this environment to Oxford or Cambridge, Mum. And you say that to my mum and dad, their eyes light up, right?
Of course. Like on the 1st of March, I also think it just, again, goes back to that projected lack of worth. That it's that, you were suppressed because they felt threatened by you. They knew that you were shining light. And it's funny because the brighter your light shines, the more people try and drag you down and make you small. And
I think therapy allows you then to
shine your
light. So next week I will lead 18 to 23-year-olds in generative AI and how we can bring ethics, equity and equality, which is my whole mission. Then on the 1st of March, I'll lead a lecture for Cambridge University.
That is so amazing.
Where you are able to supersede and you are able to change light. So and it's not been one therapist. Let's be frank, it's been 3.
That's okay. I mean, I've written a memoir that has 12 years. There's a lot of people in there. A lot. There's been lots of people. Because actually what happens is you do, and you will find at some point there'll be somebody new, or you might go this way and there'll be somebody new. It's funny because I'm reading, it's like you're fixing what I'm reading. I'm reading The Algorithm. I don't know if you've read that book, and it's
no.
I'll have to send you. And she's talking about the bias in technology used for recruiting, and it's all about how it's sabotaging, employee experience and job search. And
I'm advising people on that. So
yes, it's like you two need to connect. You're doing the fixing of what she's talking about, which is just terrifying.
I mean, you have to consider it as your future workforce, and we are blindly going into it. And if the data is not representative, so we generally have global north data, not global south data, but yet we say, we've got a brick economy growing, right? We have data that is biased. So therefore, though, we are building solutions based on a lack of diversity, a lack of inclusion, a lack of equity, but we have a whole load of E&I statements. We actually need to get ahead of that fast and design that properly. So that's
instead of saying here's some technology that isn't biased when you know damn well it is. Like anyway, we've gone off topic, but it just shows you actually that you did hit that point. You did hit we call it a breakthrough. I think when you're out the other side and it doesn't feel like a breakdown anymore, you've had your breakthrough, and here you are doing something absolutely amazing. Because I think the critical bit was you went, I need help. I think that was your. And it's really tough. I think as trauma survivors, it's really tough because you just learn hyper-independence, don't ask for help, suck it in. And actually it's the most destructive thing we can do to ourselves, whereas asking for help
I think there were two.
Powerful thing.
For me, there are 3. I need help. Letting go of fear and shame. Fear and shame are...
dreadfully disgusting. Not disgusting. Oh my God, what's the word? Destructive. So close. Wrong word.
Yeah, and there was a third, but I've lost it now.
Oh dear, sorry. That was me. Ask for help, fear and shame, which is destructive, and then, oh well, we can put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we put it in the show notes. It kind of felt critical, but it's
them
okay.
hanging.
But yeah, no, letting go of, I do believe that for me, a part of me died.
Yeah.
And in death, you become fearless.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, like, people go, you're doing that, or
oh yeah, fearless is a wonderful
there's a bit that you grieve, or you put whatever trauma it is, it allows you to grieve, and part of you dies. And in that death, there's a part of rebirth. And I don't know whether it's like a Project Phoenix or something like that that's come up, but you are very different. You are a very different person than what you are.
Yeah.
So I would say it's those three things to me.
I'd agree. There is, I love it when people call me fearless. I just look at them and think, wow. Particularly if they don't know my story. It's like, wow, just to hear that, to be told that, it's just, I was so riddled with fear. So it's like now, I was like, yep, thank you. If people would like to chat to you further, shall I direct them to LinkedIn? Is that the easiest?
Just LinkedIn. It's a whole portfolio of stuff. You can never put me in a box,
amazing.
Katrina.
I wouldn't dream of putting you in a box. Oh my God. I love what you're up to.
Yeah.
And any way I can champion it, I totally will. So
yeah,
I don't like putting anybody in a box. I think we're all bloody weird, and I just love that. So I don't know if you saw the podcast with Isabel Gatherer. I mean, we're both absolutely crazy when we start talking spiritual. So, and people probably have me in a recruitment box. I'm like, you should just say there's a whole other box or 10. So anyway, thank you so much. We got there. Took a bit, but we got there. So thank you. It was so worth it.
You're welcome, darling.
Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Damage of Words. How brave, how vulnerable, all to inspire listeners like you to take a step or inspire others to take a step. Imagine what healing we could create if we normalize this conversation. So please pass this on and of course subscribe so we can do just that. Until next time, thank you.